Christians are being persecuted. From every angle, all through our culture and society, Christianity is being persecuted. That is what we hear constantly, isn't it? From all sources, from around our nation, we hear that Christians are being persecuted. We hear that Christianity is losing their liberties. In order for us to effectively overcome any persecution, we must first of all identify who is doing the persecuting. And in order to justify, validify, or to understand the persecution, we need to identify Christianity. And so that's what we're going to do here today. Christianity, in its entirety, is based upon this book, what is referred to as the Holy Bible. The Bible meaning little books. The Protestant Bible has 66 books in it. But the story of Jesus did not begin until what is commonly called the New Testament or the New Covenant. And Matthew is the first one that we find in the Bible. And in identifying Christianity, in brevity, we learn that the word Christian basically means a follower of Christ. So in order to be a true follower of Christ, we must then study the life of Christ. Sadly, throughout most of Christianity, the issue exists that most people simply say, I believe, I'm saved, and really know very little about the message of Jesus, what his life and the message was about. In order to defend against any persecution, in order to identify who is really doing the persecuting of Christians or Christianity, we would need then to find out what the exact teachings, what the message, what the life of Jesus was all about. In doing this and in studying the life of Jesus in the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which are the four books in the Bible that tune in specifically to the life and teachings of Jesus, we learn several things. Now, first of all, I would like to bring attention to Thomas Jefferson, who had his own questions as to what was Christianity, what was the message that Jesus gave that we should be following, what was the life of Jesus that a true Christian must be following. Thomas Jefferson was so concerned about this that he wrote, edited the four Gospels, and that his version became known as the Jefferson Bible. The Jefferson Bible, basically what Thomas Jefferson did was to remove any of the supernatural. What we clearly can see is that a virgin birth, a walking on water, turning water into wine, or even being raised from the dead, does not in and of itself validify any message being given. So Thomas Jefferson chose to remove those parts of the story and focus on the teachings of Jesus instead of the miracles, the supernatural. We first find that Jesus was born into a Jewish culture. He was born under Jewish law. He learned and knew the Jewish tradition, the Bible even referring to his going to the temple as a young teen and being very studious and knowledgeable about the Jewish tradition. There was, right before he gave his greatest sermon that's recorded in the Bible, which has become known as the Sermon on the Mount and includes what is called the Beatitudes, or the happy verses, or blessed verses, if you will, in Matthew. Right before he gave his introductory sermon, Jesus was tested. You may be familiar with this, Matthew 4, 1 through 11, where Satan, God's adversary, took Jesus into the wilderness. And Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and he was hungry. and the Bible calling Satan the tempter, came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." How did Jesus respond? He said, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." So Jesus denied himself food when, as the tempter, as what we assume here is Satan, rightfully challenged Jesus with that you're hungry. You fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Clearly, you can command that these stones become bread and have something to eat, no longer be hungry. But Jesus denied himself. What was the next test? Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. And he said these words, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." And Jesus' response in verse 7, "It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again, Jesus stood firmly. He did not exercise what Jesus did not deny that he had the capability to get these things done. No point in these verses are we reading that Jesus said, "No, I can't do that," or "that can't be done." That wasn't the point. The point was that Jesus denied even bringing himself food or even allowing himself to be tested to say, "Oh, God saved me." He didn't do that. We go on to the next verse, and this is a very powerful test, the last of the three tests that Jesus was put under after 40 days and 40 nights of no food, fasting. The devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. "All this I will give you," he said, "if you bow down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." Then finally, of course, the devil left him, and the angels came and attended him. Now, what is the purpose of these three tests? What do we learn from these three tests? We learn that Jesus was not selfish. He was not self-seeking. He was selfless. We learned also that Jesus did not deny any of these challenges, the outcome, which could have been as the devil has suggested. Jesus did not deny that Satan could indeed give him power all over the nations of the earth. He didn't say, "Oh, I already have these. This is my planet. This is my nations." He never said that. He only said that worship the Lord your God and serve him only. So Jesus was focused on anything but earthly matters, it seems, at this point. Right after that, Jesus called his disciples together, and we get into the 5th chapter of the book of Matthew. And even though this is in the four Gospels, the greatest sermon, the introductory sermon, this tells that Jesus spends these 3 chapters of this book of Matthew explaining his entire ministry, what he was all about, which should be important to anybody that calls themselves a Christian. The Beatitudes, the happy verses in verse 5, and I'm going to read those, and I want you to think about these words. And he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they are comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the poor, pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil things against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Isn't that interesting? The introduction to his sermon. He's certainly not blessing the wealthy. He's certainly not blessing the warriors. He's focused on those who are suffering, who are persecuted. As we go through his ministry, you'll find that his entire life was spent serving the very ones that he was talking about here in the Beatitudes, the ones that would be blessed. They certainly were not blessing those who were having the best in this life, on this earth now. Jesus, having been brought up under the Jewish law and knowing the Jewish law, came of age, started his ministry. That, as a Christian, that's what a Christian should be focused on by the pure meaning of the word Christian. And unfortunately, again, I'm going to restate this. The problem that we see is that most who claim to be Christians do not even have much of an idea about the teachings of Jesus. It's boiled down to an Elvis-sized version of Jesus of, I believe and I'm saved, and when I die, I will be with my Lord in heaven. But when we actually open this book up and read it, read the words that are written in red here, that give the account of Jesus' life and his message, we find something different. We find something extremely different than what we're seeing in Christianity today. In the 17th verse, right after the Beatitudes, Jesus says, "Do not think I have come to abolish the law of the prophets," which of course would have been the Jewish law. "I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least strike of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven, but whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." And then he goes in to some interesting thought that seems to contradict what he just said there about the fulfillment of the law. But we pay attention to where he said he came not to abolish, but to fulfill the law. Where Jesus said in the 21st verse, "You've heard it said, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder." 10 Commandments, right? Part of the Jewish law. "And anyone who murders will be subject to judgment." But listen to what Jesus said, "But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, 'Raka,' is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, 'You fool,' will be in danger of the fire of hell." I want you to keep that in mind, what he said. The Jewish law had said, "Thou shalt not murder," commonly referred to in the 10 Commandments of the Jewish law. He took it to a different level. What's he trying to say? He said he didn't abolish the law, began to fulfill the law. Well, something's taking place here very strongly. He goes on, "Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come back to offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown in prison. Truly I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. So again, we're taking the Jewish law just a little bit further, a little bit different. And Jesus is calling this a fulfillment of the law, not an abolishment of the law. But you see it's going a little different way here. Look at what he says about adultery. And this is part, again, you've heard it with the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery. And Jesus is addressing these, but he's taking it to a different place than what the Jewish law and Jewish custom had interpreted it. You've heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Wow, that's a whole different take on adultery. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off, throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Look at this. We've gone and we've taken murder to a different step. We've taken having a grudge or complaint against your brother to a different step. We've taken adultery to a whole new step. It don't start with the act of adultery. It starts with the act of lust, according to Jesus. This is what Christianity is based on, right? This book, the teachings of Jesus in this book, that's what it's based on, correct? So this is what we have to focus on. Not, even though he says he didn't abolish the Jewish law, he came to fulfill it, and we begin to see what this fulfillment's all about because it's taking on a different context totally. He says of divorce, it has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her the victim of adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery, okay? Again, this is all going in a whole new route here. He's taking and the Jewish law, he's taking it somewhere else, somewhere that the Jews had not been, somewhere that the Jews who lived under the Jewish tradition, the Jewish law, the Mosaic law, they've never heard this. This is new to them, so he has taken this to a whole new level. And of course, this is going to plague him the rest of his short life. Oaths. We continue again. You have heard that it is said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you've made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven or in God's name, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make it even one hair white or black. All you need to say simply is yes or no. Anything beyond this point comes from the evil one. Wow. So all the people that get upset when maybe a president does not swear on the Bible, I think they've missed something here. I think they've never tuned in to Matthew chapter 5, verse 33. That's the words of your Christ. Eye for an eye. Listen to this. You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. This is one that's excused away a lot. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you. Do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Wow. Well, that's a lot of food for thought. How many times have you heard these words from the pulpit? How many times have you heard these words from your politician maybe who wants to say that they support Christianity or believes in the Bible and so forth? How many times have you read this? Really? love your enemies. 43rd verse, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, I, being Jesus, right here, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? And not even the tax collectors doing that? Did you hear what he's saying here? If you love those who are good to you, you're not really doing anything. You've not really accomplished. That's easy. That's the easy part of this program, isn't it? Oh, I love you. Thank you for the birthday gift. That's sweet. But what about those that ran you over on the way to work today, or take a different stance, or God forbid, maybe they're even Muslim? You gotta love those too? If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Well, guess we're going to kick them out of the country. Do not even the pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Well, we're seeing some dramatic things here. We're seeing some dramatic changes from the Jewish law that Jesus was brought up under, and Jesus was taught. He was born a Jew, under Jewish custom, Jewish law. He went to the temple. He didn't go to the Baptist church, or the Methodist church, or the Catholic church. He went to a Jewish temple. He learned Jewish law, but my goodness, what he's come forth with here. Now we're going to get into the 6th chapter of Matthew, the 2nd chapter of Jesus' most powerful sermon, his introductory sermon as to what his entire life and his entire ministry was going to be about. And for anyone claiming to be a follower of Jesus, then this is, of course, very important for you to know. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. That's another powerful statement, and it's going to be explained a little bit further as I continue to read. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with a trumpet as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, and to be honored by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Some very plain words here. Jesus came, he said, I came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. As you read in this text, the Bible, the book you claim to base your entire belief system on, very plain words here, very direct, red lettered in your Bible, from the one you call Christ, Jesus, the one born a Jew under Jewish law, and things he has changed dramatically as he's introducing in his first major sermon that's recorded in the Bible. He's introducing what his whole ministry, what his whole life is going to be about. We're going to go, and then I'm going to do a continuation of this, but I want to finish in chapter 6 here before I move on, because he hits on prayer next. We live in a culture now to where you hear and have heard in the past that we have these problems because prayer was taken out of school, God was taken out of school. The teens like to stand in front of the schoolyards at 7:30 in the morning, hold hands around a flagpole and pray. You see families sitting in restaurants in public praying. What does Jesus say about prayer? And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. What is your motivation for pushing this prayer issue? You want to be heard, you want to be seen. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close your door, pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans. They think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. You think about that. There's another chapter and a half in that sermon that Jesus gave in your Bible. There's different translations. You can read the King James, the NIV, or whatever version you care. You're going to come out the same way. You can excuse those things away, but then are you being genuine to the Christ you claim to follow? Very, very interesting indeed. Who did Jesus focus on in His ministry? Who did Jesus criticize in His ministry? We see from what we just read clearly that His focus was on the poor, the needy, the humble, those who were without, that the blessings that would be received would not be received in this earthly existence, but in an eternal condition in heaven, the kingdom of heaven. Jesus had these words to say, and I want you to listen very carefully to these words of Jesus. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to His disciples, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees are the official interpreters of the law of Moses. Keeping in mind here that Jesus was brought up under the law of Moses, this was what was practiced commonly. It was the majority belief system in His region and in His era. So practice and obey whatever they tell you, but don't follow their example. For they don't practice what they preach or what they teach. They crush people with unbearable religious demands and never lift a finger to ease the burden. Everything they do is for show. On their arms they wear extra wide prayer boxes with scripture verses inside, and they wear robes with extra long tassels. And they love to sit at the head tables at banquets and in the seats of honor in the synagogues. They love to receive respectful greetings as they walk in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi. Don't let anyone call you rabbi, for you have only one teacher, and all you are equal as brothers and sisters. And don't address anyone here on earth as Father, for only God in heaven is your Father. And don't let anyone call you teacher, for you have only one teacher, the Messiah. The greatest among you must be a servant. But those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. What sorrow awaits the teachers of religious law and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You won't go in yourselves, and you don't let others enter either. What sorrow awaits you teachers of religious law and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cross land and sea to make one convert, and then you turn that person into twice the child of hell you yourselves are. Blind guides, what sorrow awaits you, for you say that it means nothing to swear by God's temple, but that it is binding to swear by the gold in the temple. Blind fools, which is more important, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? And you say that to swear by the altar is not binding, but to swear by the gifts on the altar is binding. How blind! For which is more important, the gift on the altar or the altar that makes the gift sacred? When you swear by the altar, you are swearing by it and by everything on it. And when you swear by the temple, you are swearing by it and by God who lives in it. And when you swear by heaven, you are swearing by the throne of God and by God who sits on the throne. What sorrow awaits you teachers of religious law and you Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens, but you ignore the most important aspects of the law: justice, mercy, and faith. You should tithe, yes, But do not neglect the most important things. Blind guide, you strain your water so you won't accidentally swallow a gnat, but instead you swallow a camel. So Christianity is being persecuted. By reading just that bit of what Jesus had to say, you could say the founder of Christianity. In reality, the word Christian was not first given as something that was a positive name. It was kind of an insult, derogatory term, because the ones that followed Christ never labeled themselves as a Christian. The word Christian is found only 3 times in this book you call the Bible, and it was given by non-believers to label those who followed the teachings of Jesus. Jesus was put to death at a very early age, he was not a popular man, and he warned that those who followed him would not be popular. So much so that he said that broad and spacious and cramped is the road leading to destruction, but narrow is the path, and few find the road leading to salvation. So as we look to seek to identify those who persecute Christianity, we must give thought as to who is really persecuting Christianity, who is really slapping the Christ in the face, who is really the ones that are making a mockery of the teachings of the one they call Christ. Do you follow those teachings? Do you even know these teachings? Is your form of Christianity basically a God and country, I believe in Jesus, I tote my gun, and I vote Republican, conservative? Are you against looking out for the poor and the needy? The one common denominator found all the way through this book, to care for the poor and needy. And no, you're not been taught correctly. Sodom and Gomorrah was not destroyed because of homosexuality. The book of Ezekiel clearly points out that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because they were arrogant. They did not tend to the needy. They were overfed and did not care for the hungry. Never once did the Bible indicate that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed for any other reason. And this is a common theme throughout the book. I will sum up today with a letter from God. No matter what your beliefs, no matter what your definition of God, a creator, is, I would like for you to set aside those things for a moment. Think about the universe, think about life, think about nature, think about this planet. Think about any being, almighty, all-knowing, all-powerful being that would have created all this that we have on this little tiny blue dot here floating through space, the Milky Way galaxy, out through the universe. You're born here. You have everything you need instantaneously from your first breath. Water, food, air, vegetation, and you find a way for shelter. So a letter from God. My dear creation, it is I, your creator. Yes, I love you all just as a mother loves her children. I have provided for you all a planet home that has upon it and within it all the resources you need to live a full, productive, and happy life. Vegetation, air, water, yes, everything you ever needed. But not so unlike that mother who has provided so well for her children. I often wonder if I gave you too much and not required enough from you in return. Like that loving, caring mother, your sweet words towards me do feel good, but your actions mean so much more to me. The well-being of all my creation means much more to me than any words of praise that you could give to me, or any amount of verbal gratitude you could toss my way. I only need in return that you care for what I provided to you, that you not be selfish with the things that I blessed you with, that you first and foremost care for each other. Allow your brothers and sisters to be who they are without undue criticism or ridicule, without withholding from all your family the abundance given to you. To treat all your siblings with equal care. When one is ill, to take care of them, to nurse them back to health. When one of you is without, to share, make certain they have food, they have shelter. It's all so very simple. I don't need shrines built to me no more than a mother needs a shrine built to her. My peace and contentment comes solely and completely from knowing you are well cared for. From knowing you are not in conflict and that you all came to my garden of abundance that is spread throughout that family home, earth, and equally partake of its riches. To not abuse the home or its resources it provides to you, to seek peace, not war with each other, to strive hard for peaceful resolutions instead of using threats and violence towards one another. All the things that any loving parent wants for their progeny. When you look into the eyes of each other, see the similarities instead of differences. Recognize the needs of each other. Celebrate your uniqueness instead of attempting to force your brothers and sisters to do as you would do. But you see, you know that each of you won't need the same basic things. So come and eat at my table. It's been well prepared for you. The garden is full of fine, fresh foods, and the air fills the space around you, stemming and cleansed by the foliage of the trees and plants. The water falls from the sky and gathers for you all to partake of, life springing forth from the soil. It is for you all, not just the smartest among you, for it is with no doubt that those among you who are the smartest are responsible to care for those who have less, to ensure that none of you are without. No mother takes pride in one of her sons hoarding what was given freely to him, then selectively doling it out to his other siblings. No, that saddens me just as it would with any caring parent. No mother takes pride in one son building mansions while allowing his siblings to be homeless or hungry. A mother feels most respected and appreciated with her children when they share generously with all his family. And you, my creation, are all my family. The earth is our home, our place of comfort, our place of safety. Make me happy by ensuring that it is indeed such a place for all, regardless of what section of my home you call your room. It is really that simple. There is no need to complicate such a simple process with arguments as to how you choose to represent me, for sadly many of those stronger personalities in my family would choose to force their opinions of me on others. Like any mother, I love and care for you all, and I require from you, my creation, all is of the same.